timetable as things are stand now is that on Thursday, me and the president are going to lead the country in the signing, launching the signing of the document or collection of signatures for the document. So there will be some leaders who will also sign that day. Thereafter, the copies are going to be sent to all counties and to constituencies and to wards. And we want this signature collection to be done as quickly as possible so that by latest end of next week, we'll have concluded that exercise. After that, the document will be presented to the Electoral Commission for verification of signatures and finally publication.
All right, so ODM leader Raila Odinga there speaking about the BBI roadmap. The collection of signatures was supposed to start today. Francis, I found this quite interesting, even when Mr. Odinga was speaking about it the other day, because I was asking myself, collecting signatures on what? Because we saw a report with so many annexures, but it wasn't quite clear what is going to the referendum, what is not, and that sort of thing. But be that as it may, that's now off the table for now. Please just paint for us a picture of how we got here.
Well, it's interesting that we are where we are today. The soundbite that you just played there was a function that was scheduled to take place today. But events in the last 2-3 days necessitated the rescheduling of that event. For now, we don't know when the signature collection will be. We hear in a week's time, in 2 weeks' time. The steering committee will tell us, that team that is now led by Junet Mohammed and Dennis Waweru, they will be telling us what happened. But obviously, the fact that there was a postponement of the event that was to take place today tells you some things are not adding up behind the scenes. The statement yesterday told us it was about a bill that is not yet ready. I'm not sure that is the reason, because if there was a scheduled signature collection, there obviously ought to have been a bill that was ready, because for what are you collecting signatures for? I mean, you ought to have a ready bill so that you start signing, getting signatures for it. And there are two things that probably we need to look at in context here. There is the BBI report, the report as is, and then there are the specific issues that need to be dealt with either via Parliament or through an amendment of the Constitution. The report as is now, we said it here again, that report has no legs to take it to Parliament. The easier way to take it to Parliament is through the various acts of amendment bills to amend various acts of Parliament, and of course that Constitution Amendment Bill that will be published and for whom the signatures will be collected in support of, and thereafter taken to the county assemblies, and the whole process of amending the Constitution and a referendum is outlined in the 2010 Constitution. But it is important to say a number of things that have happened this week necessitated the cancellation of today's event. That meeting between the president and the religious leaders, and the meeting that we gather happened between the president and the deputy president, I would say those are the two fundamental reasons why the event today didn't happen. Not that the whole BBI process is over or is off. It's probably an opportunity to have a discussion about a number of things. But I don't know how much of a discussion it will be, because I don't see a scenario where everybody will agree with a document. There will obviously be people who will be happy with the content. There are obviously people who will not be happy with the content. Eventually, if we ever get there, if we have to have a referendum, then it will be framed in such a way that you'll be voting yes or no. So maybe it's to try and get as much consensus as possible if that will happen, but also does it mean that the document will be reopened? Will we have a BBI 3 now that we have had a BBI 1 in 2019 November? We had another one last month. Does it mean that we will have another document? Does it mean that we will have a constitution conference where people will put on the table what is contentious, what is not contentious, what are the pros and cons of each of the contentious issues, and maybe find a consensus? Maybe. Those are the situations that I look at.
Jamila, this is looking untidy. I mean, we spoke about this last week on the show where we were wondering, at that point, Francis wondered rather more loudly than all of us who was actually running the process. Yeah. Because, you know, the Adam Solo team handed over the report, and then there was an interregnum, you know, in between. We didn't know who was handling it, which kind of explains why almost everybody left, right, and center was telling us what was going to happen next. But here is a situation where the ODM leader comes and makes an important announcement, and this was the second time I think he was talking about that collection of signatures and putting a date to it, a date that is not too far off. And then on the eve of it, we are told, well, you know, the bill is not ready. There's been a delay, but at the same time, there's also a different narrative coming from different places about the DP having met the president, and therefore that may have had something to do with this. But a very confusing affair this last couple of days. Very confusing, Joe. And some would say that maybe it's because there's those who are trying to avoid a contested referendum. Because, you know, if we do end up having a contested referendum, it will sort of like polarize the country, especially now that we are grappling with the COVID-19 pandemic. And I think there are those who may think that we do not want to go down that route. You may say that, yes, the Deputy President has not really outright come out and said he's against the BBI document. He has pointed out various issues that he feels need to be looked at, including the creation of the Office of the Judiciary Ombudsman, him saying that having the President appointing the Judiciary Ombudsman who sits in the JSC will interfere with the independence of the judiciary. He has an issue with the replacing of the National Police Service Commission with the Kenya Police Council chaired by the Interior CS, saying the same thing, independence of the police, and the proposal of having commissioners of the IBC picked to represent political parties. Those are the things that he has an issue with, and he's spoken about it, not saying that outright, no, don't support the document. But now, the issues that Gachuri was speaking about, we've had delegations, several groups, different sectors, they've been clamoring, want their concerns to be looked at from the churches, from members of parliament, from women groups, from different groups have come up trying to say, okay, this document is okay, but can you be given a chance to at least have what we feel should be included in it included? And then you hear one side saying that nothing is going to change that document. The only thing that will happen is a bit of editing. That should raise a bit of concern in terms of now this document is going to be binding. If you're going to change the constitution, we can't change again next year or the year after and say, well, this is something binding. So any changes that need to be made will be there for long. Because it's been, 10 years since we got the new constitution? It was new then. 10 years later, that's when we are changing it. So that we need to get it right now. And I feel that voices should be heard. That opportunity to at least listen to what people have to say and make everyone feel like this is our document, instead of it being pushed by one or two or three people, I think is important. Because we're talking about polarizing the country. We don't want to have that, especially now we're having COVID-19, and two, we have an election in 2022. Linus, it probably just goes to show that perhaps the constitutional moment that the president has been discerning once in a while may actually not be there yet.
We've all cautioned about that from the very beginning, because constitutional moments are self-evident. You will feel it on the street. The regular Kenyan will tell you on the street that this is a constitutional moment. But here we are in a situation where we are almost having to manually generate a constitutional moment. And that doesn't seem to be going on very well. And you had described earlier about the untidiness of the process. It looks to me like the moment the task force, whose joint secretaries were Ambassador Kimani and Advocate Paul Mwangi, the moment they finished their job, the tidy handling of things almost ended. Because now this whole thing was passed on to a secretariat headed by politicians. Junet Mohammed and the former Dagoretti.
And rather quietly and mysteriously, they just kind of showed up.
Yes. That is a problem right there. And we had also spoken about the fact that BBI constitutional reforms are sort of top-down in terms of how it's approaching reforms. It's coming from the leaders and going down to the people. Now, a difference can be painted in how else we've written the Constitution before, through very popular initiatives. And by popular, I mean popular even on the street, where people would gather in Bomas of Kenya and the country will stop and listen to what is going on there. Was the atmosphere the same when we had the launch of BBI at the Bomas of Kenya? It wasn't. This is a top-down approach, which is why it is a delicate process. And if the principles, President Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga, are not careful, the untidiness that you're talking about can actually unravel, can actually make this thing look even worse than it ought to. What it says right now is, after the secretariat of Paul Mwangi and Ambassador Kimani, is BBI is it in the right steering hands? I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, Yvonne, lest you say your views have not been included in the discussion.
And ask for consensus in a conference on the issue.
I just wanted a non-contested show.
Yeah. I wanted to add on to what's been said here about steering the process forward. So you have Junet Mohammed and Dennis Waweru. We are yet to hear from them on where this process goes to next and how they're going to steer the next phase. Instead, you're hearing from ODM leader Raila Odinga, who's giving us a roadmap of we're going to be collecting signatures and that sort of thing, which is very different from what you see on the Jubilee side. I don't know if anyone has made the observation that Raila Odinga has been fronted as the face of BBI and the face of the referendum and pushing and driving this agenda, which politically, knowing how we have the politics of betrayal, in my view, and I stand corrected, gives President Uhuru Kenyatta deniability and the opportunity to walk away from this if things don't quite go as planned. It gives him an alibi of sorts, if you think about it.
It has a Mau Forest ring to it.
Absolutely, yes. And former Prime Minister Raila Odinga has been there before. This is something he would definitely know. So in all of these launches, he's the one who comes out and he'll talk about the BBI. In fact, I don't know if anyone has noticed, he's also the one who will take on the deputy president head on and say, Yulemtu. But when the president gets up to speak, he will talk about how he wants everybody to get along and how this is all about unity and making a more cohesive nation. And I dare say the handshake has more benefits for Uhuru Kenyatta, the president, than it does for Raila Odinga. It grants him the legitimacy of a second term, which he did not have, right after 2017. And should this work, then it works, better for him. Should this fail, I think the person who has more...
It gives him peace of mind.
It gives him peace of mind, to sort of ride off into the sunset and retire in peace after his second term. There was that I wanted to add. And then also, when we're talking about the top-down approach, the way it is looking is that this is going to be a process that will be forced to go back to the grassroots and start from the bottom going up, which is what you see with all of these meetings, including, with the religious leaders. And when you hear statements from Adam Zolo, like only Raila Odinga and the president can change the document, then that is the clearest signal yet to anyone who may have been doubting the fact that this is being driven largely by the two handshake proponents and is being rammed down the throats of Kenyans, and if they're not careful, Kenyans could seriously rebel. Here's something that I thought the churches said during that meeting in their memorandum or in their memoir after meeting the president that will seemingly take the government back to the route that this should have started with, which is with the people. They asked some three very key questions. They asked, do the proposals resolve the 9 issues that the BBI task force was tasked to address? Do the proposals require constitutional amendments through a referendum? And more importantly, do the proposals create more problems than they are seeking to solve? Some very key questions. And from what we understand after this meeting, they actually did raise the fact that, the very tenuous relationship between the president and his deputy, could be more harm than it's worth, with this entire process. And so they're going to be forced to do things the way they should have started at the beginning.
Let me just add to what Yvonne is talking about. And one of the things that have been emerging in the last few weeks is it's starting to become a debate about the content of the BBI report. And let's face it, the main issues that were supposed to be the selling point of BBI are coming under heavy attack. The Kenya Conference of Catholic Bishops, for example, dismissed blow by blow. Francis, the issue of the presidency. They said it doesn't solve the winner takes it all problem. It actually creates a proper winner take it all, because the president will have so much powers as per the Catholic bishops, and they said, appointing the prime minister, appointing a running mate, dismissing the deputy president, a lot of powers, an imperial presidency. They also went to issue number 2, which is the expansion of the legislature, and they said this is a burden on taxpayers. Issue number 3, IEBC, where the BBI proposes that parties should be nominating commissioners to the IEBC, and they're saying, how do you do that? How do you assure the independence of an electoral body if appointees are from the political parties? And then number 4, they also totally rejected it, is the creation of the Kenya Police Council, headed by the Minister in charge of Security. Minister in charge of Security. And the point is, if you are replacing that, if you are replacing IPOA with the Kenya Police Council, where is the oversight element? So I think the BBI... Is it the
IPOA or the National Police Service Commission?
National Police Service Commission. Yes. Yeah. IPOA would be upgraded to a constitutional commission under Chapter 15, I think.
Right. Yeah, but the point they are also making is the discussion on content has begun in earnest. And so we have now 2 issues that the BBI Secretariat has to manage. The heavy presence of politics, and then there's the issue of content.
And you know that what you mentioned about the Catholic bishops is exactly part of the memorandum that Yvonne was talking about, where the representatives of the church leaders, the Kenya Conference of Catholic Bishops, the NCCK, the Evangelical Alliance. And these people actually raised this issue of the expansion of the executive, the expansion of parliament. They talked about the ombudsman issue that you raised, the IEBC issue, then the national police thing. They actually even talked about the 2/3 gender, where they're saying the shifting of the woman reps from the National Assembly to the Senate is, in their view, actually, they said it is retrogressive and will not guarantee that the rule of law is adhered to. And then they go on and even raise issues that the church was concerned about in 2005, 2010, about state and religion, family and morality, religious freedom, and things of that sort, which just muddies the water even more. That actually this thing is getting out of hand, in the sense that the way that they have handled it up until now has been exclusively driven by the 2 principles, as they have been called. But now we're getting into a situation where many groups are coming up and raising very substantive issues that any ordinary, normal, sane observer will say, actually, that makes sense. So how do you deal with that at a time when we've been told that not even a comma or a full stop can change unless it is an editorial?
And Joe, when we speak about the content, Gashuri, how many pages is the BBI report? I'm not sure. But the issues that we keep seeing or hearing about are particular ones. The creation of the office of the Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister, the issues to do with the Judiciary Ombudsman, the issues to do with the political parties to nominate electoral commissioners, issues about governors to appoint running mates of the opposite gender, issues to do with the Health Commission. They're important issues, but they're the only ones that people are hearing about. It's because, one, the document is not in the public domain in terms of kufikia watu, where everybody is, so they're able to see what else is contained in this report. There is so much more that is contained in the BBI report, but you keep hearing about this particular 8, 9, 10 issues all the time. 1, 2, when are people actually going to get hands on the copies of these documents so are they able to understand what's in them? You know, we say they're driven politically, and then there are those who say, fulani amesoma, mimi sihitaji kusoma for me to be able to vote on it. But young people, people with mobile phones, the internet, on social media, yes, they can get copies of it, yes, but what about the people in the village, like my grandmother? She needs to have it in Swahili for her to understand. Are we going to translate the document into Swahili or any of the local languages for people to be able to understand what's in the report? Because again, we are talking about the same issues, 10, 11 points, but you're forgetting everything else that's in the report. You may not get 100%, but at least some of the other issues in them should be spoken about and explained.
But Joy, it's also important to remember that in 2010, churches did not support the then proposed constitution. They were in the no team. Even though a majority of Kenyans voted yes for the document, it is important to put that in on record, because some of the issues that they are raising now were the same issues that they raised in 2010. You remember that question about abortion, family and morality, religion and state. They're the same issues they raise even now, alongside others that are in the document. Now, my question is, if there's an opportunity for reopening the document, whose ideas, whose views, whose recommendations will be included and whose recommendations will be kept aside? Is it a wish list? Because you saw what the governors did when they went to Naivasha. They included a few issues that were national and a few that were also personal. Remember, like that proposal that they should be, they should be, you know, given some immunity of sorts from prosecution. I think that is more of a personal view, bearing in mind that quite a number of governors are in court for corruption, and others, we are told, are on EACC's radar. So I think it is also important, once the discussion is out, and probably there's an opportunity for reopening the document, that the issues that will be, you know, brought forward will be the issues that are national, not necessarily personal. You even saw some questions about pension and everything else. And also it is important to remember that not everything will be going to a referendum anyway. Some of these recommendations, some of these contestations maybe can find their way to Parliament, where members of Parliament have an opportunity to discuss them. But I also want to go back to that document by the religious leaders. I will specifically look at number 8, paragraph number 8 of their document. They're saying, in conclusion, Your Excellency, they are addressing this to the President. We make these proposals to the Presidency as the symbol of our national unity, so that you promote dialogue and consensus building at this critical time. This will be a befitting legacy that you will bestow on this nation. So the push for consensus building is out, and their suggestion for a national constitutional conference is out. So whether this will be granted or not is a very critical question to ask.
I think, guys, we need to move to...
Before you move, because Francis raises a very important point about even the language that attends to the current conversations around the BBI report and the reforms. Because someone must ask, how much of these changes in the constitution are about the future? Because it has been made a lot of times to sound like a shopping list for the current leaders. Either
complete with a deadline.
Yeah, complete with a deadline. It's a bit like, and sorry for the analogy, you know, sending someone to a supermarket, get me a sweet, or get me a sugar cane, get me something, you know. And that is how it's been made to sound. How much of this is actually about a future that is not about these current leaders?
Yeah.
Because what we see is a conversation that seems to think, oh, these 5 positions of the expanded executive, they have names to that. They have filled it already. And you go to the regions, and the regions say, now we want this. MCAs are asking for the World Development Fund. It's all about now. It's all about, it's a shopping list. And that is very, very sad about constitution making. Constitution making should be more than just about the present generations.
All right. This conversation obviously
Joe, allow me to read you one tweet here from a gentleman called his legendary MV. He says, timetable has changed. Mwalimu wa chemistry ameomba subject ya PE, a double lesson for chemistry. Actually raises a very fundamental question. What becomes of the timetable that was issued in Naivasha when members of parliament met the president and the former prime minister? Is it still there? Because we were told up to 2nd of December there will be collection of signatures. We are a few days from there. Will it still stand?
I think the question will be, whose timetable was it?